A mother hurts her children physically and or emotionally, and she does it to attract attention to herself. Attention from doctors, hospitals, friends and family. Of course, she denies it, or it wouldn't work. She lies. It's called Munchausen syndrome by proxy, or liar's disease. It's complex, confusing, and very difficult to diagnose. Obviously, a mother suffering from this syndrome must be separated from her children for the children's sake. If a doctor diagnoses a mother with this disorder, any denial is seen simply as further evidence. But what if the doctor has got it wrong? The children's illnesses are for real. Who do you believe? Who is telling the truth? Genevieve Westcott met a woman here in New Zealand who says this is exactly what has happened to her in Britain. There they took her children away. Will it happen again here in New Zealand?
I don't want everybody to know about my past. I came here to start a new life. I didn't harm my children. I've left my children.
For the first time, Suzanne MacDonald is going public, disclosing a secret about her previous life in England.
I had 4 lovely children, I had a nice home, they had everything that they needed.
But British authorities labelled her a dangerous child abuser and took her 4 children away forever. So she came to New Zealand, searching for a new beginning.
I've got a husband, got a new life.
A new life with a new baby on the way. Suzanne says she was devastated to receive a letter from New Zealand Social Welfare saying they knew about her past and had concerns about her pregnancy.
What's your worst fear?
That the baby will be taken away.
What would that do to you?
I can't say that it would destroy me, because I think that a part of me has already been destroyed when I lost my other children.
British authorities claim Suzanne suffers from a psychiatric condition called Munchausen syndrome by proxy. It afflicts mostly mothers who, they say, do it for attention, either by pretending their young children are ill, or even worse, deliberately making them sick, in extreme cases through suffocation, even poisoning.
I've seen a mother break a child's arm. I've seen mothers poisoning their children.
British pediatrician David Southall is considered a world expert in this condition. He diagnosed Suzanne and more than 100 like her in Britain.
We've seen mothers hitting their children, kicking their children, swearing at them. And yet, when the doctors and nurses are there, they are being really nice to their children, pretending to be nice. The parents who undertake this abuse can appear to be very plausible, but they lie, and they lie very convincingly.
He's a very frightening person. He's very cold, very hard, and very frightening.
Until last year, this was Suzanne's home, Gosport, a bleak working-class town on the south coast of England. By the age of 19, she was a single mother of twin daughters, Jenna and Emma, born prematurely at just 27 weeks and severely handicapped.
I just didn't think that they were going to survive. The doctors didn't even think that they would survive.
But her tiny twins, cocooned in incubators for 10 weeks, survived a multitude of major medical complications, including brain hemorrhages.
They just didn't feel like they were mine.
Was it a frightening time for you?
Very. Especially when other babies were born and they would die.
Do you think that there was a part of you that held back from really loving these children?
Yeah, very much so, yeah. It just felt that if I got really close to them, it would hurt more.
After 4 months in hospital, doctors sent Suzanne and her babies home.
She was completely alone with what was, in fact, a very complex disorder in twins. Not just one, but twins. This mother should have been a priority case And so should the babies.
British psychologist Lisa Blakemore-Brown. She's fighting to clear Suzanne's name and win back her children.
I was so shocked by this case, I have to say. I feel it's a very good example of how wrong we can get it in this system.
In your professional opinion, did Suzanne and the twins ever get the kind of support they really needed?
No, I don't think the issues were even addressed.
Lisa Blakemore-Brown believes social services and Professor Southall formed the view the problems in Suzanne's family were caused by her. But Lisa believes the twins had major disabilities, and they were at the heart of the problem.
Wash your faces.
Jenna and Emma were slow to walk, shared a secret language, stayed in nappies till almost 5.
But it wasn't until they reached the age of about 2 that I became really concerned, and we belonged to a twins group, and I'd see other twins of the same age, and they'd be running around and doing things, and mine just sat there and did nothing.
In 1990, Suzanne had Oliver, and in 1992, Lucy. They were normal in every sense. Jenna and Emma, meantime, were increasingly violent.
Maybe, yeah.
1 minute they're absolutely fine, and the next minute they're fighting.
And when you say fighting, I mean, what are we talking about?
Oh, they'd pull each other's hair, they'd try to strangle each other, they'd kick, they'd bite, they'd punch, they'd spit at you.
While Oliver and Lucy were happy, normal kids, there were occasional problems. Twice, Suzanne took them to hospital when they took medicine they shouldn't have.
Could you ever have deliberately given them a drug overdose?
No. No. I used to joke about it at one time when the court hearing was going on, because I really didn't believe that I would lose my children. And Emma was always the worst one. And I always used to say, you know, God, if I wanted to drug one of my children, it'd be Emma, you know, not the others. But that was just said, you know, as a joke.
With hindsight, Suzanne now believes she made a fatal error in ever seeking help from social services at this office in Gosport.
I went to them quite openly and begged them for help. And they would just say to me, oh, it's not as bad as what you say it is. And then I'd get a social worker come to the house, and the twins would be playing havoc, wrecking the house or whatever, and the social worker would get up and leave. And that was supposed to be support, and that was of no support to me at all.
Reports prepared at that time reveal many of the social workers and other professionals believe Suzanne was emotionally and physically abusing her twins. One report said she'd given Jenna a black eye. Suzanne told social workers about it as soon as it happened.
Doesn't this say to you that maybe she's capable of physical abuse?
No. Suzanne was saying, I can't stand any more of it. You know, these things are happening and I don't know what to do. Please help me. And of course, none of this was forthcoming. There were lots of visits, but these only served the purpose to actually demoralise this woman that was already on her knees.
After 10 years of crying in the wind, a frustrated Suzanne confronted her social workers.
I said I was sick of being led up the garden path, and I was going to go private, and if I found out that there was something wrong with the children, I was going to come back and sue the pants off them. And
what effect do you think that had on them, looking back now?
Fear. I think fear.
In 1995, during a temper tantrum at home, Emma overdosed on her asthma medication. Social services placed all 4 children on the at-risk register. Suzanne, exhausted and depressed, took a drug overdose. It's clear this was a family in crisis. The question was why? Was it because the twins had special needs that were being overlooked? Or was it because, as some authorities were now suggesting, a problem with Suzanne? Munchausen syndrome by proxy, perhaps?
Then the social worker applied for an emergency protection order on Emma.
Emma was placed in foster care, and social services sought custody of all 4 children.
And within a year,
They were gone.
they were gone.
Mm-hmm.
It was here to the Royal Courts of Justice that Suzanne came last February, battling for her very lifeblood, for the custody of her 4 young children. The trial would take 2 weeks and cost British taxpayers almost £500,000. The accusation that Suzanne suffered from Munchausen syndrome by proxy and was dangerous to her children.
But Suzanne believed she had a strong defense. 3 experts, including psychologist Blakemore Brown, independently diagnosed the twins as having ADD, attention deficit disorder. They believed their problems had nothing to do with abuse, but were caused by brain damage at birth.
They had intraventricular hemorrhages, which are closely linked with attention deficit disorders. It was very clear that the children had significant learning difficulties. There's no argument about this.
But social services suspected Suzanne had Munchausen's. They turned to expert Professor Southall to review their massive files, more than 1,100 documents. Yet experts who supported Suzanne continue to question his interpretation of some of the evidence. Like this extensive assessment. It says that Suzanne was basically a good mother who needed support, not criticism. That there was no evidence she ever poisoned Oliver or Lucy with drugs. Yet Professor Southall seems to have discounted that and instead chose to highlight the few negative comments. In the opinion of psychologist Lisa Blakemore Brown, that was worrying.
So he was moving away from a kind of caring, compassionate sort of perspective on this woman and these little children, towards one in which she was being pilloried. I didn't like it.
In fact, Professor Southall only spoke to Suzanne once, right at the end of his investigation. It's clear he didn't believe her version of events.
Because he says that these mothers are liars, this has been one of the problems in this case. If you say that Suzanne is a liar, then whatever Suzanne says isn't going to be believed.
Southall concluded Suzanne had a personality disorder, deliberately poisoned her children, and lied about medical symptoms in herself and the children, features consistent with Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Professor Southall also found the twins did not suffer from ADD. That's important because if the judge did accept the twins had ADD, it would go a long way to proving the problems lay with the children, not Suzanne.
In this case, did you personally and professionally believe it was a case of ADD?
No.
You didn't?
No.
How do you know that?
Well, because the evidence was pretty overwhelming. There was physical and emotional abuse going on for these children, and the court backed up that view.
How do you define emotional abuse? You're a pediatrician. Have you had any psychiatric training?
No.
Psychological training?
When I say no, I mean, obviously, if you've dealt with over 120 cases of child abuse involving personality disordered activity, you become a bit of an expert on that condition. But I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm not an expert on mental illness.
Nor does Professor Southall have any training in ADD.
It's very important that anybody that's got anything to say in this area is properly trained and qualified. It's absolutely crucial because it's cutting edge. This isn't guesswork. And we can't just say that it's all emotional abuse, it's all the mother's fault, take the kids away. We can't afford to, for a start. And it's certainly immoral.
Immoral or not, Professor Southall not only diagnosed Suzanne as having Munchausen's, he said her children should be removed. The judge agreed with that opinion.
The judge decided you were wrong and Professor Southall was right. The kids had to go.
Yeah. And of course, we assume that the justice system always gets it right. What's occurring now is that we're realising that it doesn't always get it right. And it's scary when these things happen because we've believed in these systems for so long. And many do get justice. But for those who don't, the bottom drops out of their world. It's a very, very scary place.
The judge accepted social services evidence and Professor Southall's expert opinion and placed all 4 children in the full care of social services. Suzanne wasn't in court that day. She couldn't bear to hear the outcome. Social services had warned her to have her children ready and waiting here at a friend's house.
We'd been taking photographs in the morning, and Jenna wanted to get all of the photographs developed straight away. So she went down to town with my granddad and put it in for like an hour's processing, and not one picture came out.
When the waiting became unbearable, Suzanne went for a walk on her own. And when she returned, her children were gone.
My friend said to me, they're all gone. And that was it. I didn't see anybody after that. I just wanted to be on my own.
What was the last thing you said to your children? Do you remember?
2 months later, Suzanne met Vince MacDonald, a young Kiwi working in Gosport.
I'd met Vince, and I loved him, I'd married him, and I wanted to be with him, and I felt it was time to start a new life.
A new life and a new name on the other side of the world. It seems Professor Southall didn't know Suzanne had moved to New Zealand.
She's left this country.
She left this country.
Did you know that?
No.
She's in
She was
New
convicted.
Zealand. She was convicted, but she says you got it wrong, I think.
Well, of course. She would, wouldn't she? So she left the country. Did she take the children with her?
No.
She left them behind.
She left them behind.
But she was pregnant. Is that right?
Professor Southall refused to discuss Suzanne's case, even though we had her approval.
Let me ask you this. Do you think her new baby will be safe?
I can't
In
answer.
that
I'm not going to answer
family?
the question, you see. I can't be drawn on it.
Dawn on Waitangi Day in Auckland.
Anybody else?
Suzanne's about to have her baby.
How are you feeling now, going off to hospital? What are your thoughts?
Well, nervous. But just be glad when it's all over.
But they're worried. For the last 2 months, New Zealand Social Welfare have been weighing up what action they might take, whether or not they should remove the baby.
I contacted them, and she said that they haven't made any decisions, and it's just been left like that. So I don't know whether they're going to contact us after the baby's born or whatever. I just don't know.
Suzanne has been through childbirth before. She is prepared for the pain of labor, but not for the uncertainty of her child's future. Coming up, is it possible Professor Southall's opinion is wrong? He has got it wrong before, and more than once.
Professor Southall is an expert in Munchausen syndrome by proxy. He's been involved in over 100 cases. But while a British High Court accepted his opinion in Suzanne MacDonald's case, he's far from infallible. What you are about to see is extraordinary. Secret cameras, mothers spied upon in hospital, and the bizarre case of a woman diagnosed with so-called liar's disease because her 3 pet puppies were found strangled. Central to it all, as Genevieve Westcott found, is Professor Southall, the women prepared to fight his medical diagnoses, and British justice.
Did you ever imagine you would lose your children?
No. I had faith in the judicial system. I thought that they're called the Royal Courts of Justice for a reason, and I thought that justice would be served, but it wasn't.
They say that British justice is the best in the world, but it is far from perfect. On the very day that we arrived in England to investigate Suzanne's case, the eyes of the world were fixed on the High Court here in London, where 3 innocent men were about to be freed after a lifetime in prison, convicted of a brutal killing they did not commit.
People didn't want to know, and people have looked at us with hate and contempt in our eyes. They've called us child killer.
Child killer. That's what this British woman felt she was being labeled by Professor Southall. He diagnosed Gwyn Tenney, this mother of 3, as suffering from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. But he got it wrong. What did Professor Southall accuse you of?
Intentional suffocation of my daughter.
Okay.
Gwyn's daughter Anne Herod had 17 apnea attacks before her first birthday. She'd stopped breathing in her sleep. So Gwyn was overjoyed when Professor Southall gave her a special monitor to take home to sound an alarm when her baby was having an attack. She even appeared on television to praise him.
I'm one of the lucky ones because my baby Anne Herod is under Dr Southall from the Royal Brompton.
Yeah.
I am lucky.
Gwyn now knows Southall was using a monitor like this one to identify what he later would claim was deliberate suffocation. The unsuspecting mother was then invited to bring her baby to a special unit at this Midlands hospital for further testing. It was a difficult time for mother and baby.
I couldn't lift her for a cuddle. She was in the cot for 16 days. She wasn't allowed a bath during that time. She's 14 months old. She wears a nappy. She needs bathing daily, if not twice a day.
Not until much later did Gwyn discover what Professor Southall was really up to.
4 cameras in a room filming me semi-naked, filming me coming from the ensuite bathroom, filming my daughter being fed through the bars of the cot.
Southall has been secretly spying on mums like Gwyn since the mid-'80s, videoing their every move, hoping to catch them abusing their children.
Video surveillance in hospital of the mother abusing the child is the most convincing evidence you can get.
There's no doubt he has detected some abuse, leading to prosecutions and children placed in care. But he's also drawn a lot of flack over his spy cameras. Still, he claims the end justifies the means. He's saving babies' lives. Why don't you just tell these mothers that you're deeply suspicious and you're going to video their every move?
Because that would inhibit them from doing what they would otherwise have done. Because these people are not mentally ill. They know what they're doing. It's deliberate.
Did he find any abuse?
No, nothing, no abuse at all. The only evidence he ever gave to a court from the videoing was that when my husband entered the room, my child squealed with delight. That's all he had to offer from 16 days of what I consider physical and mental abuse.
Undaunted, Southall and his colleagues decided the home monitor readouts were proof enough that Gwyn had suffocated her baby. Within 4 days, social services took Anne Herod away and threatened adoption.
It was like a nightmare, like something that I wasn't part of.
No.
But months later, just before the court hearing, social services suddenly dropped the case because 5 other doctors said Southall got it wrong.
He came very close to destroying us as a family unit, very close. We tried very hard to get on with our lives, not think about him again, put the whole thing behind us. Unfortunately, we can't do that. The allegation is still on my daughter's medical records, my medical records, and our social service file.
You didn't believe she tried to kill her baby?
No, I didn't, and I didn't think the evidence supported that.
Dr. Paul Johnson is one of Britain's leading experts in children with breathing difficulties. He's testified in court on behalf of several women diagnosed with Munchausen's. He has grave concerns about Professor Southall's objectivity.
He believes fervently, almost passionately in this, and to the extent that he's not willing to look at other evidence. I just think he's absolutely wrong. He's not adequately trained. I come back to the point, he does not have enough experience in the areas that he claims to be an expert.
Dr. Johnson says Professor Southall is a general pediatrician, not qualified in the complex fields of physiology or neonatal medicine. His methods are unproven and his equipment unreliable.
He's using technology that he developed. It's 10 to 12 years old now.
Southall uses event monitors to record for just a few minutes before and after a breathing attack. But Dr. Johnson says that's not enough. With babies suffering from apnea, it's crucial to get a continuous video and physiological record of what's happening.
The child is asleep here.
To demonstrate, he showed us a readout from a child he was asked to monitor, whose mother was suspected of intentional suffocation. He discovered the apnea was genuine.
This is considered a rare form of epilepsy-induced apnea. The mother's response was almost immediate, was, "Now you know what I've been talking about."
Otherwise, she would have been blamed for suffocating her child.
Yes, yes. That's why we can't be certain with the methods that are currently being used.
The faces of women who say they've been wrongly accused of Munchausen's, only to have charges against them later dropped or overturned in court. Most of them had children taken from them. At least 7 families have taken steps to sue Southall for medical negligence. Sharon Payne was falsely accused. It took her 14 months to clear her name. Andrea Colley and Maria Worrell were also misdiagnosed by Professor Southall. Maria's son Jonathan was plagued with mysterious breathing attacks since birth. Initially, he was placed on one of Southall's monitors at home, then admitted to hospital for observation. There, out of the blue, Maria was confronted by a number of hospital staff.
Dr Southall said, in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with Jonathan. And if you admit to me now that either you've made it up or you've harmed him, I'll make sure that you get him back. But if you don't admit anything, you won't ever see him again. You know, if you're going to be awkward with us, I'm going to get the police to arrest you. And I said, well, fine, you do that. You know, I really haven't done anything, and I haven't.
Maria and her husband were arrested by police. They had no idea what social services had done with their children.
They'd made my 3 children warders of court. At no time had they attempted to interview my husband, any family member, my neighbours. They'd spoken to nobody, not even myself. You know, I really think that's out of order.
I think I'd rather be accused of murder. I was subjected to all sorts of trauma, accusations. I had my house vandalised, spray painted, and I was completely outcast from the rest of the community.
Andrea Colley, who has 3 children, was married to a local policeman. Her story is so bizarre, it's hard to believe.
What did Professor Southall accuse you of doing?
He accused me of gaining attention for myself using Labrador puppies.
By doing what to them?
He said that I was hurting them, taking them to the vets, as would a mother do to a child. He said that I would move on from taking the dogs to the vet to the children to the hospital.
It began with the death of the family puppies, all brutally strangled. Southall called it Munchausen syndrome by animal proxy.
There was 2 adults in the house and the suspicious deaths of 3 animals. And it had to be one of us, and he chose me.
After many months, her husband, who'd had a breakdown, confessed in court he'd killed the dogs. Andrea's children were saved.
At the stage of the court hearing, the final court hearing, they were talking about the children being adopted because I was so dangerous.
How do you feel about Professor Southall today?
I hate him.
He's ruined my life. He's ruined my family's life. You know, we all still eat and breathe this man.
I feel very, very angry, you know, that he's not being made accountable. I know that he appears on camera sort of religiously claiming, you know, that all these mothers are evil, and I mean, he said some pretty horrendous things about us. It's very hard to live with that when we know, you know, that we